My plans are airtight, and even if they were to get out, they would be dismissed as so much fake news.
A problem reaction solution.
So what's your podcast about?
Oh, it's about psychology, true crime, supernatural stuff, the occasional paranormal or philosophical rant.
Well, maybe I could check it out sometime.
MKUltra was terminated in 1973.
You start by secretly creating a problem in the world and making sure someone else is blamed for it in the public arena, in the public mind.
MKUltra was science, sanctioned by the government.
What power do they have? They have none. The power that politicians have is the power we bloody give to them every day in the form of acquiescence and obedience.
But of course it all ended the moment that John Hinckley shot Ronald Reagan.
Someone else is blamed for it. The fundamental reason for a war is to change the nature of post-war society. And what we saw in the First World War and the Second World War were massive global examples of problem reaction solution.
Little did he know that this simple, seemingly innocuous act would result in his imminent death.
We've been manipulated both in the days of royalty and in the days of politics to give our power away to that system.
MKUltra was science, sanctioned by the government.
This is your nautical lantern on the dangerous seas of darkness. Let's push off from the placid shore of the status quo and explore what's beyond the horizon. I am your host, BT, and this is Truth and Shadow, your podcast of the supernatural.
Let me start here. Most people hear the phrase mind control and they instantly picture a movie, a guy in a chair, a swinging watch, a voice saying sleep, obey, forget. And that's exactly why mind control works. Because we've been trained to recognize the cartoon version of it. So we miss the real thing when it's happening in front of us. Truth is, mind control is rarely about turning someone into a robot. It's something simpler. It's about shaping what you notice, shaping what you ignore, shaping what you fear, shaping what you believe is normal. And if you can shape those four things long enough, you can shape a person. You don't need chains, you don't need a gun, you don't even need them to know it's happening. You just need them exhausted, distracted, emotionally overloaded, and hungry for some kind of relief. That's the real battlefield. It's not the ballot box, it's not the stock market, it's not in the streets. It's the battlefield of perception. And that's why ideas and programs like MKUltra still matter. It's why we still need to talk about them. Not because it's some kind of spooky chapter in history, though it is. Not because it's a headline people argue about online, because they do. MKUltra matters because it proves something important. At the highest levels of power, people seriously believed the human mind could be broken down and rebuilt. Not with philosophy, but with technique, with pressure, with chemistry, with fear, and more so with trauma. And whether you think the program succeeded or failed is almost beside the point. Because the bigger question is, why would they try it in the first place? MKUltra came out of an era where paranoia was the policy. Cold War America wasn't just afraid of bombs, it was afraid of infiltration. Not just people crossing the border, people crossing into your mind. The fear wasn't only that the enemy could kill you, it was that they would change you. that they could take a person, strip away their loyalty, rewrite their identity, and send them back into society wearing a normal face with a foreign mind. That was the nightmare. And when governments became afraid enough, they stopped acting like guardians and instead became like gamblers. They started placing bets with human lives, and the bet was this: if we can figure out how to control consciousness, we can control everything else. It's not complicated. Control the person, control the crowd. Control the crowd, control the nation. Control the nation, control history. That is the logic of MKUltra, and it's the logic that never really went away. To understand how dark this gets, you have to stop thinking about it as an isolated American scandal. Start seeing it as part of a larger pattern in human history. When a society becomes obsessed with outcomes, it starts justifying anything, especially if it can hide it, especially if it can wrap it in some kind of official mumbo-jumbo, especially if it can convince itself it's doing something right and necessary. And here's something people don't want to admit to. The 20th century produced a kind of evil that wasn't horns and hooves. It was paperwork, it was research, it was progress. It looked like men speaking calmly while doing things that should have made them vomit. This program, MKUltra, was not born in a vacuum. It had a precedent. Human experimentation didn't begin with the CIA. The modern world had already shown it was capable of doing it. And one of the most chilling examples, one that still doesn't get talked about today, is Unit 731. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you're about to understand why I'm even bringing this up. Because Unit 731 is proof that when consciousness dies, science doesn't become neutral, it becomes predatory. People are turned into test subjects. We're not talking about criminals. We're not talking about volunteers. We're talking about unsuspecting human beings. And the reason I bring it up is because a lot of people still live under the illusion that that kind of thing was ancient history. It's not. It's modern. It's organized. It's deliberate. And it happens under the same sun we live under. So once you accept that, then MKUltra stops feeling unbelievable. It starts feeling inevitable. When the world is terrified, someone always tries to invent some kind of shortcut. And that program was a shortcut to power over the human person. Now let's strip away the drama and make this plain. How do you break someone? Well, you isolate them. You confuse them. You overwhelm their nervous system. You make them find reality unstable. Take away their sleep, take away their sensory experience. You shock them, you give them chemicals, you feed them contradictions. A constant state of up and down, fear and relief, panic and numbness until the mind can't settle. And then something happens. The person stops resisting because they agree with you. They stop resisting because they're exhausted, and exhaustion is the key, because the exhausted mind will accept almost anything if it means the pain stops. This is why mind control, real mind control, isn't mainly about persuasion. It's about collapse of society. It's about shattering someone's inner stability so completely that they'll cling to the very first voice that offers them a way out. It's not limited to laboratories. It's not limited to secret programs. It's not limited to history. It's a method. So here's why I'm going to make some people uncomfortable. When you hear of MKUltra, you imagine a dark room and government agents. But what if I told you the modern version doesn't need a dark room? What if I told you it doesn't even need force? Because the modern world discovered something far more effective. You can weaken a person just by keeping them constantly distracted, scrolling. Not with violence, but with constant stimulation, constant novelty, constant noise, constant outrage, constant entertainment. And if you want to test this, try something simple. Sit down, put your phone away, be there in silence for 10 minutes. No music, no even background noise, just you. Most people can't even do it. Not because they're weak, because they've been trained. Their mind is going to panic without any kind of input. And that's not an accident, it's by design. You were not made to live in a constant stream of interruption. You were not built to carry 1,000 fragments of information in your head every day. But that's what we do now. And the result is predictable. Shortened attention span, emotional volatility, permanent anxiety, chronic low-grade anger, constant mental restlessness. And here's the part that should scare you. A distracted person can't think deeply enough to notice they're being shaped and formed. There's a phrase people laugh at, bread and circuses. But it's not a joke. It's a warning from history. Rome didn't keep people under control primarily through oppression. It kept them under control by keeping them occupied, keep the crowd fed, keep them entertained, keep them noisy, keep them reactive. They won't organize, they won't question, they won't resist. Now look around you. Tell me we aren't living in a modern version of that. Now the circus fits in your pocket. It follows you into your bedroom. It greets you before your own thoughts do. And it doesn't merely entertain you. It's going to study you. It's going to learn your patterns. It's going to watch how long your eyes stay on something. It knows what makes you angry. It knows what makes you afraid. It knows what makes you feel powerful. And it feeds you more of it. Not because it's trying to destroy you by some kind of mustache-twirling psychopath, because it's trying to keep you engaged. Engagement is money, and engagement is influence. Engagement is control. A lot of people still don't understand this. They think, I choose what I watch. No, you don't. You choose what you're given. And what you're given is chosen by systems designed to hold your attention, just designed to keep you clicking, scrolling, reacting. Because reaction is the easiest thing to manufacture. A thoughtful person is hard to manipulate. A reactive person? That's a piece of cake. You just push the right button, and the modern world is a button factory. So when I say MKUltra matters, I don't mean it's interesting. I mean it's a warning shot. It reveals the mindset that says the human person is not sacred. The human mind is a tool, identity is disposable, memory is negotiable. And once you accept that mindset, you start seeing fingerprints everywhere. The media, education, politics, and the way people are trained to argue, not think, and the way language is weaponized, and the way the same phrases repeat across millions of mouths, and the way people no longer speak like individuals. They just regurgitate broadcasts. They're just repeating it. They're looping it. They're performing some kind of tribal membership. And that's not some kind of conversation. It's all programming. Now I'm going to be blunt. Because this is truth and shadow, you can live your whole life without noticing the manipulation. Most people do. Because noticing it creates responsibility. If you notice the pattern, you have to change. If you have to resist, you have to detox what's killing your mind. People don't want to do that. They want what makes them comfortable. They want to be able to escape. They want their constant stimulation. They want the distraction that keeps the deeper questions away. But the truth is, deep questions don't go away. They're going to wait. They'll return when you're alone at night, when the house is quiet, when the world stops talking. And suddenly you realize you've been running from your own thoughts. So if you're listening to this and you feel a tightness in your chest, that's just some kind of anchor building in you. And that's good, because now you're engaged. That's your mind waking up. And here's the part that matters. Once you wake up, you don't go back. There are stories we tell to frighten children. Then there are the ones that the government tells us to keep quiet. MKUltra was supposed to be one of those forgotten stories, a relic of Cold War paranoia, a research project buried deep beneath redacted pages and hidden files. Yet every so often the shadow whisper that it never really ended, that the experiment simply changed names, traded needles for screens and syringes for algorithms. We like to think our thoughts are our own, but what if memory itself can be rewritten? What if belief, love, fear can be tuned like radio waves in a mind that no longer belongs entirely to us? Looking at this with me as one who has dug deep and scoured the rabbit hole, he is the cipher, signal nomad, and neon ghost himself, Jacob J. Welcome to Truth and Shadow Podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me this fine evening. Very much looking forward to this conversation.
Let's go ahead and drop some links, tell people about who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, so, I mean, some of the best places you can find me is Instagram, Telegram, or X, formerly Twitter. I still call it Twitter, but pretty much anywhere at Rise to Liberty. It's a call to action. So, you can also find me on Substack, which under a different name, it's actually Beware the Mockingbird. And you can also find my merch store at risetoliberty.store. Those are the best places to find me right now. But also I am on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, all the video podcasts, all the podcatchers, Spotify, Apple, all of those places. So as far as who I am, So first and foremost, I am a MKUltra and mind control researcher. That's I of course research other topics, but this is my area of expertise. I'm about 10 years deep as far as being into MKUltra, mind control, behavior modification, these sorts of things. I also have a really strong focus on the Program to Kill thesis from David McGowan. I spend a lot of time doing that. So, serial killers, basically just working from that sort of angle of things. In fact, I just completed my first video in a series that I'm doing on the West Memphis 3 with William Ramsey. And that turned out really well. So that's kind of, what I'm doing. But my name is Jacob. I've been at this podcasting thing now. Let's see, I'm going on my 5th year. I started initially covering like third party politics, but that's entirely lame. Like politics is just fake and it doesn't do anything, and I was on that understanding when I was like involved with it and stuff, but that's why I went third party. I figured at least maybe we could shake things up a bit and get some things done locally. And no, we can't. I even ran for office a couple of times, which is kind of what got me to my position where I just know that there's no point in it. And so I just kind of switched focus, going to the mind control and MKUltra stuff, which is something I was already doing. So I just figured I might as well bring that to the public.
Yeah, no, that's some pretty deep stuff. We could talk about like the basics, like where it got started at. One of the things that I do understand with MKUltra is I think it was a CIA launched operation, which is really interesting to me because I think it was 1953, and that's only a handful of years after the CIA was created in 1947. And if you can give a little bit of background, let's just give some people back to basics with that from the things that we've heard and may have forgotten about.
Yeah, so like you said, it is a CIA launched program. It was launched in secret. Obviously, this is not something that they're going to announce to everyone, and honestly, this is not something they wanted everyone to know. So, at least on the surface, the reason they launched it. We were in the Korean War at the time. So just right after World War II, keep in mind, this is like, one of the peaks, because there were several peaks, but this is one of the peaks of Cold War hysteria. And at the time, we're in the middle of the Korean War, and there were some intelligence, I guess, that kind of came back to our forces that informed us that our soldiers were being captured, our POWs were being captured and being brainwashed by the Chinese communist. Because in the Korean War, one of the few wars that, people know like nothing about, I also knew like nothing about it, It's not really something that gets covered in school anymore. But the Chinese communists were like directly involved in the Korean War. And what was interesting is we had a group of soldiers that made headlines everywhere, all over the place. This was nationwide news. It was worldwide news, actually. And these soldiers came out, our soldiers, U.S. soldiers came out and said, that the U.S. had been dropping biological warfare and chemical warfare weapons on North Koreans. Well, at the time, the U.S. obviously denied this. That's against the Geneva Convention. This is post-World War II, so we have also just went through all of the post-World War II all of that litigation. I can't believe it's escaping me at the moment, the name of all of the court cases that came after. But so, mind you, America's really strong at this point, and we can't have anything hit our reputation. So they deny it. The U.S. claims that these soldiers were captured by the communists, by the North Koreans, and that they were brainwashed into saying these things. So that's really kind of like what sparked this. So the answer that the U.S. has is, well, if the Chinese and the Koreans are brainwashing us, they also threw the Russians in there because Cold War, and so if the communists are brainwashing our soldiers, then we need to have this technology too. We need to understand how to do this. And it came from like, how do we counteract this, right? But this is the public story. And so at one point in time, Alan Dulles, the head of the CIA, the director of the CIA, gave a speech about mind control and why it's so important for nations to be able to have the power to brainwash people. And literally the next day, which was April 13th, 1953, he signed into order MKUltra, basically, and that's what started it. So, of course, it started under the guise of, well, we're doing this to, keep up with the communists because the communists are just so advanced and we don't want to fall behind. And we're doing this only offensively, not defensively. But boy, was that not what it was. It's just a nightmare scenario. It truly is. It's one of the worst things that could have possibly happened. And it's basically, to put it shortly, like if you ever think of like a mad scientist experimenting on people and creating the worst things imaginable, we just got over with Halloween, the stereotypical mad scientist in a haunted house, and he's experimenting on these people. And that is exactly what MKUltra ended up being. Of course, it began with a lot of behavior modification. How do we get information out of spies? How do we get how do we get messages from one side of the earth to the other side of the earth without the messenger knowing? Is there like truth serums? There was a lot of basic stuff. One of the things that started in the very beginning was the Manchurian candidates, the programmed assassins. That was something that started day number one. And in fact, it actually started a little bit before MKUltra. So the way in which the programs actually worked, MKUltra was not the beginning. The very beginning was actually Project Artichoke, which then turned into Project Bluebird. Bluebird then turned into MKUltra. Artichoke, I don't believe that there's like an actual reason for why that name existed, but it only lasted for like a year and a half, 2 years. Then they changed it to Project Bluebird. Project Bluebird, the focus of that project was literally to get spies to sing like a bluebird, So little tongue-in-cheek joke from the intelligence community, And then MKUltra, there's a lot of reasons why that name kind of came about, but MK was a special designation from basically where it was coming from within the agency, and Ultra is actually an acronym, which I can't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head. But basically, MKUltra is like an umbrella term. It covers 149 sub-projects. These 149 sub-projects are the actual experiments themselves. A lot of them are pretty benign. There's nothing super special about a lot of them, but then some of them get incredibly dark incredibly quickly. And this kind of, once again, goes all over the place as far as, some of them were experimenting with drugs. Some of them were experimenting with like flicker rates on television. Some of them were experimenting with brain control chips. So we see a lot of things coming out now, like, what's that company Elon Musk has started? Neuralink. That all started under MKUltra. And it kind of branches out from there. Let's see, I have here a couple of, so Project Bluebird was from 1950 to 1951, was the predecessor to Artichoke and MKUltra. Declassified memos reveal focus on hypnosis, drugs, and trauma for behavior control. A 1951 CIA document outlines interrogation teams using polygraphs, sodium pentothal, and stress to induce trance states and extract information, emphasizing trauma's role in creating suggestible subjects. Experiments included special techniques like deprivation to simulate violent overload, aiming for disassociation of the mind. Project Artichoke, that was 1951 through 1953. Declassified files describe special interrogation using hypnosis, drugs, and covert trauma to achieve total amnesia and control. A 1952 memo details experiments with covert activities involving stress and violence simulations to break resistance, including on foreign suspects. The program explored behavior manipulation through trauma, as noted in a 2024 analysis of over 1,200 documents. These programs were exposed in the 1970s church committee hearings, which highlighted ethical abuses but confirm trauma's efficacy in mind control, providing a blueprint for modern application like media-based exposure. While not explicitly using graphic content, the principles of overload and disassociation directly parallel force-feeding violence today.
What got me looking at MKUltra was actually Unit 731, which is the Japanese one. I mean, what was that? I think that's where we get the Manchurian Candidate thing, because that was Harbin, Manchuria, in Japan. And the name of it, like Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department, which was like its cover name, and it was like biological weaponry. I mean, these guys were doing all sorts of heinous stuff, vivisection, dissection of living people. They did all sorts of crazy things in order to kind of get what they were doing. When I was looking at Unit 731, the tie-in to the MK program was how much they referenced that Japanese material and the use of Operation Paperclip to add the scientists like, Sidney Gottlieb, one of the scientists that we got from Operation Paperclip. And so this is kind of where I was starting. So, I mean, you're, like you said, you're about 10, a decade deep in this. And I'm like, I do this, whenever I pick up a breadcrumb and I go, I want to examine this a little bit. And then I put it down, I mean, I'm not deep into it like you are, but when this is what we're talking about for the start, this kind of design, right? The aim to create individuals who can be activated or deactivated at will through a system of means that I believe got its start in the 1920s and the use of film, Hollywood film productions at Lookout Mountain, for example. So it's kind of like, this is kind of where I look at, and I think this is Laurel Canyon's kind of where this begins and kind of gets its going at Lookout Mountain and all these things. And so ultimately, if we say, hey, they're creating people to control them, what are we looking at basically for today as signs and evidences that it's still going on?
Right. So we'll break this up in a couple of different sections to be able to answer this properly. So you're actually not too far off. So as far as like where this came from, you're right, but that's not the entire picture. So yes, a lot of this mind control stuff started way before the 40s. Like it's. And in fact, one of the main sources, and this will probably blow your mind a bit, one of the main sources of the mind control is actually from the elite, like the blue blood families, the royalty families. And what I mean by that is that the way in which they would raise their children, severely detached, no like connection with them, like they would basically raise mini sociopaths. This is well documented throughout royal history. Just look at any royal family. This is how they raise their children, and this is how they've been doing it for thousands of years. A lot of it came from this. Basically, they kind of took these techniques that have been passed down, from traumatized child to parent for thousands of years, and they basically added the science to it. So that's one aspect of where it came from, but it also came from just the human desire, which not every human desires this, but there are some out there that do, but the human desire to control another person. We see, parts of, or like the desire to try and control another person. We see that back in ancient Egypt, the idea of a zombie, at least the original idea of a zombie was a spell put over somebody to be able to control them and, be able to bend them to your will. So there's all sorts of areas where this comes from. And this was literally just being able to put the science to it. And Unit 731 was definitely part of it. For anyone who doesn't know, if you look into that, be careful, because it is traumatic, to say the least. But after the war, obviously the Allied forces, mainly the United States, took all of the research from Unit 731. Japan just barely even acknowledges that it once existed. That's a recent development within the last 5 years. Before, they denied it ever existed at all. But it was kind of building upon a lot of these, a lot of what was learned in places like this. Because Unit 731, although it's one of the more well-known laboratories, it was by far not the only one. So, of course, we hear the horror stories out of Germany, Poland, but there were plenty of laboratories in North Korea. There's plenty of laboratories in Russia, China. The United States had our own. So... still do. A lot of these places still have these types of laboratories still to this day. So fast forwarding a little bit, how do we know that this is still happening today? Well, one, it kind of helps to know exactly what we're talking about. And let's see here. I actually have a perfect definition of exactly what mind control is. If you could give me just a second to get that. But there's something now. So first, we have two different kinds of mind control. We have individual mind control, and we have mind control of the masses. These are deployed in entirely different ways. They have entirely different purposes, but they are both incredibly effective. One of the easiest things to point to is, as far as mass mind control, is advertising. That's what that is. Like it seems kind of like a cop-out answer, but it legitimately is brainwashing. Because here's one of the big secrets. Brainwashing itself, or mind control itself, is not inherently nefarious. So, in fact, anyone that has kids, you literally program your children to be functioning adults, right? So programming, behavior modification, these things are not inherently evil. They are literally just tools, and it happens to all of us. It's a matter of what is programmed into people is what makes it ethical or unethical. So, for instance, the most perfect definition of brainwashing that I've been able to track down, this is from Webster's New World Dictionary, not my personal favorite dictionary source, but as far as this definition, the definition of brainwashing is: brainwashing is about indoctrinating so intensely and meticulously until it creates a radical transformation of psychological characteristics and beliefs. So, in the context of what we are discussing, mind control, it's literally taking one person to believe one thing and literally forcing them to believe the opposite, such as, say, you would take an avowed anti-communist and turn them into a communist. This is brainwashing. This is what we're talking about. This is what most people think of. However, advertising is propaganda. Propaganda is used to brainwash. One of the most basic forms of mind control is repetition. It's just over and over again. And in fact, this is why modern music sucks. It's a little thing called the repeat exposure effect. You know, I mean, this goes back to Pavlov's dogs, you know, hearing the dinner bell. We keep hearing these really terrible songs over and over and over again, and eventually our brains kind of trick ourselves into thinking we actually like it. And then once the masses like it, all of a sudden the record executives say, oh, that had a bunch of downloads. I guess we should make 20 more songs that sound exactly like this. And so it's a vicious circle. But I mean, this is what brainwashing and mind control is. And it kind of begs the question, what thoughts do we have that are actually our own? Because here in the United States, we all went through, 12 years of what I call indoctrination camp, or other people call school. And some indoctrination camps are better than others, some get better funding, some have better teachers or programmers, and then plus we've all been programmed by the culture to a degree. I mean, we all have TV shows we like. We all have music we like. I mean, I'm sure you and I could sit here and talk about like what, our favorite classic car is, or like all of these other things. And these are all types of programming. So partially to answer your question, it exists everywhere. It's never not existed. And people do just kind of have to come to terms with this is what it is. That this is what brainwashing is. So even though you think it's like some big scary monster out there lurking behind every corner, which it is that, but it is also the mundane. And for anyone who doesn't quite believe me or want to challenge me, I implore anyone to go look at who Edward Bernays is. Edward Bernays is the man known as the godfather of public relations. Public relations is a fancy word for propaganda. Towards the end of, I believe, World War I, or even World War II, the word propaganda was not publicly, it wasn't popular amongst the public. So he rebranded public relations. Edward Bernays is actually the nephew of Sigmund Freud. And so what he was able to do is he was able to take his uncle's work and apply psychology to advertising. And that created public relations. One of the best, well-known, and in my opinion, most impactful campaigns that he ever worked on. He was actually hired by the pork industry to try and sell more pork. So after World War II, I'm not exactly sure why, but the market for pork was terrible. People weren't buying pork, right? Well, what he did, instead of working with just one company, he actually went to all of the pork packing companies and just said, we're all going to work together, and this is what I'm going to do for all of you. What he did was he took a very carefully worded letter, and he sent it out to, it was like 1,500 doctors nationwide, and he asked them, tricked them, basically, is what I meant by a very carefully worded letter. He used a very clever way of writing to be able to force an answer. So he basically tricked all of these doctors, but the question he asked is it healthier to eat a hearty breakfast in the morning or a light breakfast? Well, because of the way in which he worded this question, he tricked all the doctors into answering that it was healthier to eat a hearty breakfast. So since he was working with the pork industry, this is when, after they put out this information to the public, through the news, your local newspaper, but also things like Reader's Digest, Time Magazine. Once they put this information out there, they started selling breakfast bacon. And now, ever since, Americans eat bacon and eggs for breakfast because a hearty breakfast is healthy, and whether it is or not, that's kind of not the point of what I'm trying to say here. The point is the reason why Americans eat bacon and eggs for breakfast is because of an advertising campaign. And I can't think of anything more American than bacon and eggs other than apple pie, a Mustang, like rock and roll, like Coca-Cola, it's like, in fact, Coca-Cola is a great example also because the image of Santa Claus that we all have is from Coca-Cola. And the very idea that polar bears would ever drink Coca-Cola, but this is how impactful this has actually been on our culture. I implore anyone to go look up Edward Bernays' Lucky Strikes cigarette campaign. He actually infiltrated the suffragettes movement. It was taboo for women to smoke cigarettes in the 20s and 30s. And what he was able to do to tap into the female market, because the suffragette movement, they were trying to fight for the right to vote at the time. And he did something very clever. He shattered the taboo of women smoking in public by infiltrating the protest with lit cigarettes handed to women because they were called torches of freedom. Right. And it just exploded. It was everywhere. Women were smoking in public, which was breaking the taboos. It was breaking down like all these social walls and everything. And it showed the politicians, or it showed society, that these women meant business, and it worked. It really worked. So once again, you've got to ask yourself, like, are our ideas our own? Is your choice to eat bacon and eggs for breakfast your own choice? Because I would argue probably not. So this is mind control. This is behavior modification. This happens everywhere all the time. Now, get into the 21st century. We have existential crisis rectangles. You know? Right. So we have these cell phones with us constantly, all the time. Try living a life without having a smartphone now. Try getting a job without an email. Now, the problem with that is that we are on social media far more than we ever should be. And all it takes is an algorithm to be able to program these exact same things. So now these propaganda campaigns that, you know, were once pushed through the news, the newspaper, your evening news with Walter Cronkite or whatever, they're now pushed daily in 30-second intervals, literally forever. Now, you can never scroll to the end of TikTok. You can never scroll to the end of Instagram. And whether the content itself is good or bad is kind of irrelevant. It's once you click on a specific type of content, once you say you watch a cat video, it's just something simple as a cat video. Everyone loves those. Well, all of a sudden that algorithm has picked up, oh, instead of scrolling past it, he liked it, watched the whole thing. And in fact, he watched it twice. So we're going to recommend more of these videos. That's just kind of how they're built, right? And that's just a basic algorithm. This is how they used to work. They are far more complicated now. But what it will do is just recommend continuously. So then you're stuck on the social media platform longer. You're getting recommended content you like. However, it's only coming in bite-sized chunks, which is basically giving you dopamine hit after dopamine hit, basically frying your dopamine receptors. And this itself has taken the place of the old school way of, you know, black bagging somebody, putting them down in the chair and programming them a Clockwork Orange style. So now everyone has access to it, you know, from the elderly all the way down to children who should not be on social media. You know, I think most social media is 12 or 13, some are 16, some are 18, but there are very clearly children on these platforms that have no business being on them. So literally everybody's on these platforms. And the longer you spend on them, the more influence you have, because that's what they're doing. They want to try and keep you on these platforms. That's how these platforms make money, is your attention. So this is the modern iteration of it. And it's far easier to be able to manipulate who you are and the way you think than you would actually ever know.
Yeah, people are constantly exposed to things that we can use the word echo chamber. That's what it is. People will remain within their own clique, and then you share a groupthink. I mean, this is psychology 101. And so the same would exist throughout with the algorithm. I've done a couple of shadow shorts talking about the algorithm and the fact that it seems to be raising itself to the status of a pagan god in its use. And so this is a similar situation. Cultural dynamics, and then the influence, like you were talking about, the elites would use this to do these things, especially when it came to the offspring, so that they would be disassociative individuals, sociopaths, because sociopaths are made, and so they're turned into these. So they don't care about the populace; they care about themselves. So we got socio-megalomaniacs in control of the world, and that's where the trauma is. And that's all, like you said, that's 100%. And then you have individual scientists who go, look, we can take cigarettes and make women smoke them. So now we have 100% of the culture, men and women, buying our product. Business 101. The purpose of a business is to make a profit. And so that's all, you know, it's all cyclical. And then the way that it's used, when it's done by this kind of indirect brainwashing, and that means You would need to do something very major to promote or continue it, and that's to remove classical education. By removing the ability to reason things out logically, you can make the populace basically live a Philip K. Dick world.
Right. Well, then they're far more suggestible. And that's also kind of the idea. And they actually do this by traumatizing us, which is why we see the degradation of society. So we see the rise in degenerate culture, which is far more popular now than it ever has been. I mean, you know, I'm all for having a good time, but I'm also not a degenerate. And, you know, there are some people out there that would be like, oh, well, you can't judge, blah, blah, blah. Well, yes, I can. And I'm going to, because there are things that are very clearly degenerate. And while I'm not going to say, well, an adult is unallowed to do these things, I'm also going to turn around and say that an adult should not do these things. But we also see things like this through all sorts of cultural events. Like one that came to mind the other day that I kind of forgot about, but was the very classic Janet Jackson wardrobe malfunction. Right?
Yes.
Like almost everyone remembers where they were, if they were alive.
If they were alive, yeah.
And this is just one of those things. Now, it seems innocuous, right? But it's actually not. Because then, now that everyone was shocked into that, anything similar is not going to have the same sort of impact. That means you are desensitized. So this time around, when most recently we had Sydney Sweeney go to a red carpet event and she wore a see-through dress, it wasn't as shocking. Granted, this is also 2025 and there's very little still shocking, but you know, they do this through culture. They introduce it through movies, TV shows, these sorts of things. And it's something that takes place over time, because the things that are deemed acceptable in public now would not be acceptable 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And when they do this, what actually happens is it makes us more suggestible. Now, I'm only an armchair psychologist, so I can't give you the exact reasons for why this happens. But there is, let's see, some information on this. And I broke it down in a recent article I wrote on my Substack, Beware the Mockingbird. And it's mainly about the Charlie Kirk assassination coverage. Not so much the assassination itself, but the news coverage of it, whether it comes from individuals on social media or big mainstream media, and everywhere in between, basically. So let's see here. So the mechanisms of traumatization and control. When individuals are repeatedly or involuntarily exposed to graphic, violent content, example, unfiltered videos of executions or war crimes, it triggers the body's fight or flight response via the amygdala, the brain's fear center, and the HPA, which is the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. Basically, it floods the system with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. This acute stress can lead to hyperarousal, intrusive memories, and emotional numbing, hallmarks of trauma. In trauma-based mind control, this is weaponized. Trauma causes disassociation, where the mind splits off traumatic experiences to protect the core self, creating compartments that can be exploited for programming, example, implanting suggestions during vulnerable states. Over time, repeated exposure desensitizes individuals to violence, reducing empathy and increasing aggression or compliance. As the brain adapts by downregulating emotional response, this cycle amplifies suggestibility. Traumatized people may seek safety in authority figures or groups, making them prone to manipulation, such as accepting propaganda or exhibiting controlled behaviors like avoidance or dissent. So we look for in-group preferences after we've been traumatized because we're looking for empathy. We're looking for, somebody, a shoulder to lean on and be like, you wouldn't believe what I just saw. Right? I mean, this is kind of what we're looking for. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, unless it's being done to us intentionally. Then there is something wrong with that. However, this is just normal human nature to be able to seek out comfort from our groups, which we have these groups now, right? Like you were stating before, this is like an in-group clique preference. And then once you're in these groups, or once again, authority figures, once we are traumatized and we are looking for this validation or, this shoulder to cry on, we are far more suggestible because we're vulnerable. And this happens all over the place in many different ways, all the way throughout life. Once again, since we just passed Halloween, the one example that comes to mind is, say, the very first time you're a child and you see a scary movie that genuinely terrifies you. Boom, there you go. There's social programming. Now, once again, that's not inherently good or bad. It's just an example of exactly how this happens.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I wanted to make a note of. I had run a statistic a while ago because I was looking at something else, but I think now is a good time to bring this up. From in the United States, so in the United States of America specifically, so this small set of people, considering the globe, from birth to the age of 21, a man or a woman will have witnessed on screen of any kind, so that's movies, television, video games, approximately 32,000 murders of another human being. Then when you look at those same people, you will ask them a real simple question. Does seeing a dog get killed in a movie bother you? 100% of the time they will say yes. I can watch 32,000 murders of people, but you kill one dog and I'm going to be pissed. And that's that's social engineering. Like you said, that's opening the mind up. And then the second thing, this is also really fresh on my mind, is, and I really think current events is actually a smart thing to tie what you're talking about, is the mayoral running of the New York City.
Right.
Something that was really big and running was the use of a really shocking image of one of the Twin Towers being struck by a airplane, whatever. And I'm out on that one.
Right.
I already don't buy the main line because, I can think for myself, but that doesn't matter. The masses will accept that this has happened and it was perpetrated by Muslims.
Right.
We've got a Muslim mayor in New York City. And they want to use this and be like, have you guys forgotten what happened 24 years ago already? And it's like, well, that's really interesting because when he's signing in as mayor, he's wearing a yarmulke.
Right.
So how Muslim is he? Right. Because that completely violates the Muslim religion, completely violates Islam,
right.
And so what's really going on? You have to look at these signs and signals. But this is an example of what we're talking about is the aims were to get Cuomo to be mayor again because a Muslim destroyed the Twin Towers. Never mind what Cuomo did. He killed your grandma.
Right.
So ignore all those things because he's not a Muslim, right? He didn't whatever.
Yeah,
it's an example of it.
Exactly. It would be better to have the man who intentionally killed grandma than it would be a Muslim. And granted, I think that there are anyone that seeks power, in my opinion, regardless of where they come from or what they believe, I believe are a danger, you know? And so that's kind of, across all faiths, all ethnicities, all political stances. I think if you're seeking power over other people, you're a danger.
Yeah, because cultural anthropology, look, culturally, the elder they were chosen among the people, right? It was like, Robert over there, he's really good with the kids. He's really good with the animals. He's really good with the resources. Let's make him the representative of our village. And that's how that would happen. Hey, Robert, we're making you the mayor. And he's like, no. And they go, okay, we'll pick someone else. Nobody ran for that. This is a modern invention.
Right. Well, and if anyone notices, like, I picked up on a lot of propaganda coming because of this Mandani.
No, if we mispronounce the name, we don't mean any disrespect, right?
Yeah, however you pronounce his name. I saw propaganda from both sides, and it's thick. It's so thick. And granted, I do think, there is an issue with non-assimilated people from any culture coming to our country and not assimilating. I also think that there's a major problem with people who were probably born here and also trying to take advantage of these positions. Once again, anybody that seeks this power, I think is a problem. So it was almost like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't in that election, But here's an important principle of mind control I want to point out is, so an important principle of mind control is distraction. Distraction makes it possible to focus on consciousness on one or more of the five senses: sight, touch, hearing, smell, taste, in order to program in parallel the subconscious. This principle applies as much in magic tricks as in state propaganda, marketing, and advertising. The second principle of mind control that accompanies the first is repetition. The combination of distraction and repetition is highly effective in programming the human subconscious. Television, radio, and various varied circuses, entertainment, and variety are all directed to your subconscious. The art of propaganda is to address your subconscious directly. And this art has now become a real science applied on a large scale. Human beings need entertainment, indeed, but we see today that what is offered to us all the time on television with reality television, scripted reality, for example, is more of a sabotage of conscience than an innocent game that it's presented as. This is literally social engineering. In fact, I ran an experiment, a very simple experiment, and I implore anyone to do this if you have the ability to. I took mine and my wife's phones, and I opened them up. I went to Instagram. I found a post that was talking about, men and women relationships, the battle of the sexes kind of post. I went and found the exact same post from the same person. And on her account, I went to the comments. My account, I went to the comments, because if you see a post, you're not quite sure what to think about it, what does everyone do? Go to the comments, right? You want to see what other people are saying about it. Well, when I went to the comments on hers, all of her comments that she was being fed was from the female perspective. All of my comments were from the male perspective. So we were literally looking at the same thing and getting fed two different realities. So you can walk away literally watching the same thing, and you can walk away with two different conclusions, which is one of the reasons that it explains why our country is so divided. It's intentional. It is 100% intentional.
Yeah, the part about distraction, we can pull on this just for a few minutes. I'll give you a couple of things, and this is something I pay attention to. I'm going to list a handful of things: Russia and Ukraine, Ukraine and Poland, Russia and Poland, Charlie Kirk, mayor of New York City, Russia banning the Church of Satan. I don't really care either way, but this is a thing in the world. China now really hunting down Christians who receive donations, and illegal immigration. All of these things are hot topic button, right? These are all the hot topic things going on. And if one of them doesn't get your attention, the next one will. And if that one doesn't work, the next one will. And if that one doesn't work, and the whole point, like you said, is distraction. We need, and by we, I don't really mean you and I, Jacob. I mean the royal we, from the perspective of those who want to maintain this kind of brainwashing, is we need to make sure that you do not have the wherewithal to work on your own conscience, your own shadow self, if you will, if I borrow a Jungian term. Do not work on yourself. Do not have mindfulness meditation. Do not deal with your own traumas. We want you traumatized, stressed out, and overworked, right? I mean, 9 to 5 means 9 hours a day, 5 days a week. It doesn't mean 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., right? And so it's like when these things hit you and you realize them, you can do one of two things. You can take the blue pill and you can wake up and believe whatever you want to believe. Or you can take the red pill and we can take you down the rabbit hole and find out how deep it really is. Those are your options. And that's all people really need to see to wake up a little bit, is to go, okay, this is what's happening. What can we do about it? Well, I'm really addicted to scrolling on Instagram. Right? I'm getting my dopamine, right? Psychologically, I am receiving an anticipatory addiction that is never actually satiated. Read a freaking book from beginning to end. You will have finished something. If you play video games, pick up a quest in Skyrim and finish it, right? Do the thing from one end to the other end. Don't talk to anybody in Skyrim on your way to doing a quest, because you'll get more. Don't do that. Just do your quest. And that's really simple. And I think that's a good note to really help people help themselves with this kind of brainwashing stuff. And then, I mean, Jacob, you can go ahead and tell people how to pay more attention to it as well.
Right. So first and foremost, the way to combat this stuff is you have to learn about it. Now, you don't have to do what I do and spend 10 years studying this stuff. You know, I spent 10 years studying this stuff, so you don't have to, you know. And that is one of the things that I offer through the content that I put out. So to give some, you know, basic explanation, I mean, just understand the basics of exactly what is it when you turn on the TV? Well, this is a television, right? It's a prophecy, basically. We took shiny rocks out of the ground and we configured them in a particular way to create a portal to be able, television, right? And you have channels. You're channeling things. And then once you land on a channel, you're being programmed because it's programming. Right. Just understand the basics of this. You don't even have to understand the history of it. But there are certain things that you can understand. First is going to be the signs of cult manipulation. So cult manipulation involves coercive tactics used by high control groups to influence members' thoughts, behaviors, and emotions, often leading to psychological dependence and exploitation. These groups can appear as religious organizations, self-help communities, political movements, or even workplaces, school groups, and anything, online forums. All of these things can be. They're all minefields. So recognizing the signs early can help individuals protect themselves or loved ones. So some of the things that you can notice is authoritarian leadership. The leader demands unquestioning obedience, claims divine or special authority, and cannot be challenged without punishment. Isolation from outside influences. Members are encouraged or forced to cut ties with family, friends, or external sources of information, fostering a dependence on the group. Love bombing and initial overwhelming. New recruits are showered with affection, praise, and attention to build rapid emotional bonds, making it hard to leave later. Suppression of dissent or critical thinking. Questions or doubts are discouraged, labeled, or disloyalty, or met with shaming, ostracism, or punishment. Of course, financial exploitation. Members are pressured to donate large sums, work for free, or relinquish assets to the group. Fear, guilt, or shame tactics. Okay, peer pressure is also a form of mind control. And in fact, this is the best example, I think, that shows that mind control actually can be used for good, because shame is a very important part of society itself. This idea nowadays that we have to normalize things, well, let me tell you, if you have to normalize it, it's not normal, you know? And if this normalization has to take place to where everyone has to agree to it, well, that's also a form of mind control, okay? There are certain things in life that people should feel shame about. Now, there's the other side of this, and this is where shame gets the bad rap, is that it can be weaponized, making you feel shame for things that you shouldn't feel shame for, right? So it is a responsible thing to be used in society, but that requires adults, responsible adults. But shame is an important thing in society, but it can be used for evil because it's a tool, just like everything else. So fear, guilt, and shame tactics, manipulation through threats of divine punishment, external damnation, or social exclusion creates constant anxiety and compliance. This is a big one. Us versus them mentality. The group portrays outsiders as enemies or inferior, fostering paranoia and loyalty while discrediting alternative viewpoints. Let's see. So, demand for absolute loyalty and time commitment. Members must prioritize the group above personal needs, family, or health, often leading to exhaustion and burnout. Thought reform and mind control. Techniques like repetitive chanting, sleep deprivation, or information control reprogram beliefs, making members echo the group's doctrine without question. Exploitation of vulnerabilities. Groups target young, insecure, or isolated individuals. So those are some of the signs. Now, protecting yourself against trauma-based mind control. And this is specifically the things that will harm you. So trauma-based mind control, things that, whether they come from the state, the government, whether they come from an individual in your life, or whether they come from a cult, a political movement, it doesn't matter where they come from. If it's trauma-based mind control, these are the things that you can do to protect yourself. So trauma-based mind control refers to manipulative techniques that use severe psychological or physical trauma, such as exposure to graphic violence, abuse, or coercive control, to induce dissociation, suggestibility, and behavior compliance. While often associated with extreme contexts like cults, ritual abuse, or historical experiments, MKUltra, it can manifest in everyday forms like abusive relationships or overwhelming media exposure. So, number one, the best way to protect yourself, increased awareness and education. The first line of defense is understanding trauma-based mind control tactics such as isolation, sensory overload, or forced exposure to trauma. Number two, limit exposure to traumatic content and manipulative environments. Avoid or curate environments that deliver graphic violence or propaganda, such as unregulated social media feeds. Use content filters, take digital detoxes, and verify sources to prevent various trauma. In abusive situations, create physical distance to break control cycles. Trauma-informed care principles emphasize safe spaces to rebuild trust. Number three, build emotional and psychological resilience. Some of this really does come down to you got to build thicker skin. You've got to build thicker skin. So that's not all of it, but it is important. So practice grounding techniques like mindfulness, deep breathing, or journaling to stay present and counter-react disassociation, okay? That's super important. Stay grounded in reality. Number four, if things truly get bad enough, and you know yourself better than anyone else, so if you feel like you need this, do it, but seek professional help and therapy. Trauma-focused therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR, or prolonged exposure therapy can reprocess traumatic memories and break manipulative patterns. So if you truly feel like you are in a situation like this, reach out for help. There are plenty of people that specialize in these things. One of the most important aspects, one of the best ways to avoid this is to foster support networks and community. Your neighbors, your friends, your family. You don't have to like everything about your friends and your family. It's loving them that's important, and it's being there for them and them being there for you. These are the things. Now, real quick, there's something that's called the BITE model. This is not something I came up with, but the BITE model of authoritarian control. The BITE model was developed by Stephen Hassan, is a framework for identifying and analyzing the methods used by cults, authoritarian groups, and high control organizations to exert undue influence and mind control over individuals. The breakdown of it, so it's BITE. So B stands for behavior control, regulates an individual's physical reality and actions. I is information control, manipulates access to knowledge to prevent critical thinking. Tactics involved deception, withholding facts, or spreading misinformation, discouraging external media, spying on members, this sort of thing. T stands for thought control, alters how members process ideas and beliefs. This indicates indoctrinating an us versus them mentality. And finally, E is emotional control, exploits feelings to install fear, guilt, and shame. Methods involve love bombing new recruits, phobias about leaving the group, public humiliation, emotional highs, lows through reward/punishments. So these are a couple of the things that you can easily do. Limit your time on social media. Understand exactly what is happening when we use these programs. These rectangles right here, although we have to use them, we don't have to be on them all the time, but these are military grade weapons. These are military grade weapons that are beamed directly to our head constantly. So you should really limit your time on them. I guess the old adage is go out and touch grass, get some sun on your skin, go pet a puppy, go take a walk around the neighborhood and go hold hands with your significant other. Like, just do things other than you've got a limit. And it's important because if you live inside these rectangles, they have got you hook, line, and sinker. And it is far harder to get out of it than, to occasionally dip your toe in.
Yeah, there's a couple of examples. I just want to help some of the listeners too. For the most part, when we look at this trauma-based mind control, we usually quickly think about religious groups, cult, specifically religious groups, right? And that can be, I'm relationship, not religion. I mean, these are all things. These are all part of that. That's pulpit power, right. Stuff like that.
Right.
But outside of the religio experience is places you work. One of the most common uses of these techniques is to call everybody by their first name. This fosters teamwork, familial relationships, because you call your family, you call your brother and your sister, your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, these names, and you begin to develop a familial relationship that if they go, hey, aren't you a team player? Team means family. Aren't you a family member?
Right.
I don't let people do that. I go by Mr. Wallace wherever I work. That forces them to not associate. Right. It's beyond based, right? It's like, no, I'm Mr. Wallace, and you're going to call me that.
Right.
You're not going to call me Brandon. You're not, my friends call me BT.
Right.
I'm okay with, you're not my friend. You are my coworker, my boss, management. You call me Mr. Wallace.
Right.
And that actually caused such an interesting disassociation with them that when it was time to lay me off, they were like, yeah, we can lay him off. No problem. Right. Because there was already disassociated. They didn't have any kind of anything. And then when I was laid off, I didn't have any emotional turmoil over it. Right. Because I wasn't associated within that. So this is trauma-based mind control, right?
It is.
Corporations, businesses use these things to make people feel like they're part of the family. And it doesn't have to be religion.
I was just going to bring that up is in the corporate setting, in the business setting, when they say we're more of a family, and it's like, no, we're not. I come here for a paycheck.
I'm literally only here for the money.
Right.
Fantastic. Hey, it's been a great conversation. I want to go ahead and draw this to a close. Go ahead and share once again for me your links, things like that, Jacob. That'd be great. And then we can move on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. This was definitely a great conversation. I'm definitely looking forward to having another one in the future. The best places that people can find me, like I said, anywhere at Rise to Liberty or at Rise to Liberty Pod. The most active places I am is Telegram, Instagram, and X, formerly Twitter. I still call it Twitter. You can also find me on my Substack, which is Beware the Mockingbird. You can find me on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute. You can also find me Spotify, Apple Podcast, all of these places. And you can also find me at risetoliberty.store, where I just dropped some new mind control designs. I dropped a hoodie, some long sleeve t-shirts because it's getting cold, and got some more designs coming, stickers, coffee mugs, water bottles, all sorts of fun stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much the best places you can find me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for coming on my show. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course. Anytime. I'd be more than happy to come back at any point.
Have you ever had a dream, Neil, that you were so sure was real? You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
MKUltra was science sanctioned by the government.
What if you were unable to wake from that dream?
Thank you for listening. This is a free podcast based upon the value for value model. If you find value in this, or any episode, you can return that value by liking the show, subscribing to this channel, leaving a review, or sharing with a friend on your social media accounts. You can also donate on my website. Thank you again. This is BT for Truth and Shadow Podcast. You are the light in the darkness.
How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world? And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
My plans are airtight. And even if they were to get out, they would be dismissed as so much fake news.
You take the red pill. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. You stay in Wonderland. Believe whatever you want to believe.
It's a very strange, funny time where everybody must fall in line with the person in front of them. You want to live that kind of life? I wish you the best. I'll be on the other side somewhere, you know.
The truth, nothing more.